All right, everybody. We're gonna start a lecture today. So today we're gonna be talking about constraints. I mean, not just constraints. We're gonna talk about how you could lay out things within the app. So we're actually gonna be making an app today. But before we actually go into building the app, I hope you guys downloaded this already. If you haven't gone to this page yet, please download this image. But before we get into that, we're gonna talk a little bit about views and UIKit and Autolayout and how we actually display things on the screen of an app. So let's get into it. Oops. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about today is view controllers, our view controllers and views. So the things that you see on your screen, everything that you see on any kind of app on your phone is a view. It's some kind of view that's being controlled by a view controller, as the name kind of suggests. So your views are comprised of, you could have many different kinds of views. So you could have like a UI label, UI image view, UI button, a UI text view, and each one of these is like its own separate kind of view. And the reason they're all types of views is because the only things that you could display on an app are views. I'm saying views a lot, and that's because this is like a super important part of app development. You have to understand that everything that you see on your screen is a kind of view. I'm not just saying that as like an abstract term. Like a view is like an actual like object in UIKit in Swift that we're going to be using to portray all of these kinds of like buttons, text, and images. So these are just a few of like the views that we're going to be working with today. And like I said, everything's controlled by a view controller. Now we're going to go into this in a lot more detail as we go into the app, but I just want to briefly mention that these are what views are, and these are what view controllers are. Okay. And along with views comes with how do we constrain these different kinds of views? How do we say that like an image belongs like on this part of the screen, or how do we say that a button belongs on this part of the screen? So the way we do that is by constraining things. So when we, at least in this class, when we talk about app development, we want to talk about like reflexive kind of app development. We want to make sure that all of our apps like could fit on any kind of phone, on any kind of screen, like on any kind of device. And so the way we do that is by constraining things relative to each other. But to even begin talking about constraints, we have to talk about the coordinate system within iPhones, within screens. So the only thing, all right, you should take away as much as you can from this slide, but the only like crucial thing that I really want you guys to take away from this is that positive X is in the right direction and positive Y is down. So usually when we think about coordinate planes, positive Y is up, but not in this class. In this class, positive Y is always going to be down. What does that mean? Like if I have a button that I want to constrain like down a bit more, like say it's at the top and I want to move it down, then I don't change its Y position to be like negative 50 downwards, because that's not going to work. I say that I tell my button to be constrained 50 pixels in the positive Y direction, and that'll move it down. So this is where a lot of people get mixed up within iOS development. I think it took me like a year to figure this out, like even after I took the course. So I really want to stress this for y'all, like positive Y is downwards. And these are this is what fully constrained means in an app. So when we talk about fully constrained, what we mean is that your object, your view object is constrained with like that, it's constrained, and so that it knows all of these like properties like position X, position Y, width and height. And it's kind of arbitrary for right now. But what I mean by that is like every single one of your views, every single one of your like text views, buttons, all of them know exactly where they are like within the XY coordinate system, and also have a defined width and height. So yeah, I'll go into that more in the next slide. But yeah, positive Y is down. Okay. So these are the specific kinds of anchors. Yeah. So I just thought this was really funny. That's why I included it. I kind of don't want to pause it. I'm not gonna pause it. I'm not gonna pause it.
It's funny stuff.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny. We got jokes here. Anyways, when we talk about anchors, specifically about like views, we're talking about like 4 perimeter anchors within like any kind of view. So basically, like you can imagine this purple box to be like a text view, a label view, a button view. You can imagine it to be whatever you want, but know that the anchors that correspond to this object are the top anchor, the bottom anchor, leading anchor, and trailing anchor. So these aren't just like names that we give it either. This is what like Swift, this is what the language that we're coding it in gives it its name. So the top and bottom anchor kind of make sense. Like the views, top anchor constraint, like on the top of that object is like that. It's like at the top. Bottom anchor is here at the bottom. Leading anchor is on the left, and trailing anchor is on the right. And basically what this allows us to do is to say like where our object is within the frame that we're looking at. So if I were to talk about like the screen, like I could say a button is like 10 pixels below the top of the screen, 30 pixels to the left of the screen, 30 pixels to the right of the screen, and like 100 pixels above the bottom part of the screen. So that's usually how we want to constrain things. We want to make sure that all parts of the view are constrained so that there's no ambiguity on like the size of anything within that view. Are there any questions so far? Does all this kind of make sense? Yeah.
Anything like web development, there's flex. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, there's kind of something like that. So what do you in web development, we have this thing called flex, which is like a way to kind of like orient the width or height of like some kind of object with respect to the screen, like the size of the screen. Is that kind of right? And so we could apply these other things called not the video again. Oh wait, not this one either. Yeah, we have this thing called width and height anchors, which like we could define them to be constant. Like we could say the width of my like object is like 60 pixels, or like the height is like 100 pixels, or we could specify these like width and height anchors of my like view to be like some certain like ratio between like the screen, my width, the width of my screen and the width of my view. So I could say my view is like a third, like my button, say this is a button, like say my button is like a third, has a width of like of the size of a third of like my screen. I could say that. And that way, like on whichever like size screen I have, my button would always be a third of that size. So we do have stuff like that. Also, same thing with height. And we also have center anchors. So center anchors like also apply to any object. We have like center X, center Y, and it works the same way as the other anchors did. So yeah. And last thing we want to talk about are buttons. So to create a button, we say let button equal to UI button. And this is one of the primitive ways that we actually like interact with these apps. Just like the caveman came up with like the stone wheel or whatever, we came up with buttons. That way we could interact with our app. It was like one of the first things that we like. Obviously, you need to interact with your app, right? And we use buttons. So to add like an action for your button to do, we say button.add target self, meaning that like the action that I'm tying this button to is like being applied to this button itself. And then the action, which is just like a hashtag selector, and then button press. This is the button press. This is the function. And then for touch up inside, basically touch up inside is just the act of me pressing on a button and then the button only executing the function after I lift my hand up, after I lift my finger up. So if I like press the button and slide my finger to the right and my finger's off the button won't do the thing that it's supposed to. Because I have to touch up, I have to like lift my finger off the button for the touch up inside to work. So I gotta like press down, lift up. That's what touch up inside means. And this is the function that I'm tying my button to. Now, if you notice, this is almost exactly like any normal function, except we have this Objective-C tag in the front. And we need this in order for our phone to know that this function could run while our app is running. So a lot of developers have issues with that, like their button doesn't execute and doesn't do the function that's supposed to. And that's mostly because like this button, this function that we're tying our button to doesn't have this Objective-C thing in the front. And so people run into a lot of errors because of that. And so like if you run into an error where like your button's not doing, if your code could run fine without this tag, but when you press your button, it might not do anything. And you might be asking yourself, why is my button not working? Like what's wrong? It could be because of this, because you're forgetting this tag. Because Xcode won't tell you that it's wrong. You have to figure that out yourself. But yeah, those are all the slides we have for today. Do you guys have any questions? We're gonna go into the demo after. Yeah. You sure? Okay, no worries. Yeah, we're gonna be posting the slides like right after this lecture. So yeah, don't worry about copying any of this down. Like it'll be posted. And we'll also do like write it in code. So okay. We good? Okay, cool. So, all right, I'm gonna start coding. So if you guys hopefully have Xcode like installed, you should open it now.
By
And
the way, if anyone has trouble setting it up, just give me a read a look. We'll be running around the classroom to help people with stuff. Setting up is usually kind of a pain.
yeah, this is gonna be this is probably the only lecture that we're gonna be actually setting up a project from scratch. So make sure to pay attention. If you have any issues, like they're there to help you out. So, but hopefully we're all on this part of Xcode. It's like welcome to Xcode. You guys might not have any projects, so I might not say anything. You might have Playground there. But what we want to do right now is create a new project. So we're gonna click this plus arrow right here, create a new Xcode project. And the first thing it's gonna ask us is what are we making? So what we want to make is an app, right? So make sure to click app. It might take you to the multi-platform. Make sure you switch to iOS. So we have like these things. There are so many apps you can make. So we want to make sure we're making like an iOS app, right? So we're making an iOS app. It's going to be an app, and then you click next, right? And then you can name it whatever you want. I'm gonna name it like demo 2 because this is the second demo. And your team could be like whatever. If you have none there, I think that's fine too. And then you could type in anything for your organization identifier, I think. Make sure your interface is storyboard. Make sure the language is Swift, and make sure these two things are unchecked. If you have these two things, it's not a big deal, but it'll waste like space on your computer if you have them, because we're not going to be testing anything. So is everybody up to here? Okay. I'm gonna click next. Make sure it's storyboard. Okay. And it's going to ask us, where do we want to put this project? And where we want to put this, you can put this anywhere. I create a folder called iOS project. I could do it again. I'm gonna call it iOS project. So you guys could like store your projects like wherever you want. And make sure if this like create Git repository thing is unchecked. It might be checked. You could uncheck it because we're not going to be pushing this to Git unless you want to. And then now that I created my folder for where I want to put these projects, you can put them, you can put wherever you want. It should be fine. I'm gonna create my project. Okay. And we should be at this point now where we have like a screen that gives us some files of code, a lot of code. And the second thing that I want you guys to make sure of is that this thing up here, if you can't see it, that says like iPhone 14 Pro. You can change it to like whatever simulator you want. I'm going to be using iPhone 14 because iPhone 14 Pro, like the simulator is a lot of space, so I don't want to take up that much space on my laptop. But I would hope that you guys choose like a version iPhone 14 or above. Just make sure you choose iPhone like 14. And the project that you're running should be demo or whatever the name of your app is up here. It should be that, if it's not already set for you. And once you get this far, if you click the play button here on the left, your app should run. And you probably won't have anything, but as long as it doesn't crash, we're good. Does anybody have any issues? It should look exactly like this. Oh yeah. You just press play. So there's a play button on the left here at the top left. Yeah. If you press that button, press that button, then the phone automatically pops up. That's the simulator. That's where you're going to be running your apps on. Is anybody having any other issues? Yeah. Build fail. Yeah. Any other issues? Yeah. Is it like on what step? Is anybody else having any issues? Okay. Okay. I'm gonna move on a bit. So, okay. Now we have our app. So this is some great stuff. We have something running. Just to see that it works, you could do something like self.background. Wait, actually, don't talk about view.background color. If I set the view's background color within my view controller file to be red, then it should be red. Yeah, it's red. Okay. So that's how you know we're working. We're doing good things out here. So, okay. You don't have to type this. I'm about to delete this line, but just you could type it out, just see if it works. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And it should say like created by you. So this is the first project you guys would have ever made, maybe. Cool. So what are we doing today? Today we're going to be building the first screen to project 3 this in like 2 weeks. So that's why I asked you guys to download Figma. Oh, if you guys haven't downloaded Figma, it's fine. If you guys haven't made an account, it's fine. Hopefully you guys did. But basically, if you go into the course website and you go on to project navigation and delegation within chapter 3, you should see this file here. Like this Figma project. If you click here at the bottom, like intro to iOS, it should take you to like a web page that looks something like this. Something like this, right? You should be seeing something like this. Oops. So remember, it's in chapter 3, project navigation delegation. And so what I'm going to be doing with this now is I'm going to be running through how we could actually build this home screen. So usually when we develop apps in industry or like in a large group of people, we use Figma so that the designers of the app could tell us like what's going where, like what it looks like, how it should look like. And so here, what we could see is we have basically what I want to do today is I want to implement like 4 components. Actually, yeah, 4 components. I want to implement this image up here. I for sure want to have here on my app. I want to have this Jamie Gonzalez tag, this Jamie Gonzalez label. I want to have this about text here at the bottom, the description. That way I know that like I can have a description of this person. And I also want to have the edit my profile button. I want to make sure like that button is there and I'm doing something. So if you guys noticed, there are 4 things here that we want. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 4 things here in my view controller. So when we're developing apps, we instantiate the objects, the views that we're going to be working with within like the first couple lines after my class view controller. Your view controller file is always going to be the one managing your views. Remember, this is going to be what's controlling how your views are presented. So here, I'm going to be saying, let say, well, first I want to set the image up, right? So I'm going to say profile image view. It's going to be a profile image view equal to UI image. And that's all I'm gonna do. That right there tells this view controller that there exists some profile image view that I'm actually gonna make this a var. It's gonna be a var profile image view because I'm eventually gonna be changing this to have an image inside it. So right now it's just an empty UI image view, meaning it's just like a view that contains an image. And that's the first thing I'm gonna be making within my view controller. And now I'm gonna be making 3 more things. I'm gonna create a button. Actually, no, I'm gonna create a label for my name. I'm gonna call it name label. I should probably name all these vars. Var name label is equal to UI label. Var description, text view. So the thing about labels and text views is that they both present the same thing. They both present some text, but labels are usually short text. So there's already like an object, there's already a view, the UI label created for that small text that is like a label. But because the description is a little bit more than a few pieces of text, what we want to put that into is a description text view. A description text view is just going to be a UI text view that's going to hold that large amount of text, huge amount of text. And last thing we want is the button. We want to make sure to have buttons. So we're going to create edit profile button, UI button. And if you guys notice, I'm starting off each variable with like a lowercase letter because that's the convention. I start off with a lowercase letter, and then every word following after that first word is uppercase. That's usually the convention. And you always end like every variable with like what the thing is. So my profile, image view, my name, label, my description, text view, and profile button, same stuff. So that's usually how it's done. And then that's cool. Now we have all these things set up. Well, not really set up, but we have it there. We have the objects there. So now the next thing is actually like setting up these views that I just created. I'm going to delete this line now. Okay. So now here in this view did load function, what happens is like this, like when the app first gets launched, everything in my view did load gets run first. So all the setting up gets done within my view did load function. That's why I want to set up all of those views, all the properties of those views within this view did load function. So I'm gonna do that here right now. I'm gonna say profile image view is equal to UI image view with a image. Oh wait, sorry. It's profile image view dot image to UI image. Okay, and I'm using autocorrect a lot. Sorry if this might be a little bit quick, but some of this stuff automatically comes up. And basically what I'm saying here is that in this profile image view, I'm going to change the image to be something, to be a string. So what is this image? So as you guys remember earlier, I asked you to download, where is it? I asked you to download this profile image. So I'm gonna open that right now. And that's in my downloads. So you should, oh, whoops. You should have this image somewhere in your downloads folder or in whatever folder you put it in. But what I want you to do with this image is after you typed this stuff out, go into your assets folder. So if you go here to the left, there's like an assets. Can I make this larger now? There's like an assets folder here where I could then drag and drop this profile image here. Profile image. So yeah. Is everybody up to here? Is there anybody that needs me to go back to any particular piece of code? Yeah.
Is it normal we don't get the 2x, 3x?
What?
The 2x and 3x are if you go to that.
Oh, like these two?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally normal. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep moving along. So, okay, now we have our image here. So now in this named field, I could actually put in the name of my image. So the name of my image is called profile image. And I have to spell it out exactly correct or else it won't pop up. I'm gonna say profile image. And then what else? I think that's it. That's mostly it for setting up like the features of the image. But the last thing we want to do before adding it to our view is setting this property called translate auto resizing masking constraints. So if you just press like trans L and you press tab, it'll just automatically fill that stuff in. That way you don't have to type it out correctly or exactly. So it's like profile image view dot translates auto resizing masking constraints. Let me make this bigger. So okay, yeah, the translate auto masking constraints, right? I want to set this property to be false. So I'm accessing the property of this profile image view. I'm setting it to be false. And why am I doing that? So a long time ago, Swift added this property, like, I don't remember why, but for some reason, when it's true, our app doesn't pay attention to us when we tell it how we want it to be constrained. So we set it to be false. That way we're letting Xcode know, we're letting our app know that we're going to be the ones to set up the constraints. So we always want to make sure it's false, because if it's not false, then the view might not appear on the screen at all because it's confused. It's going to be like, where are the constraints for my view? It's going to be like, I don't know where they are. But if I set them to be false, it'll know that I'm going to be the one telling it where it is. And I'll write the code to constrain it in a bit, but that's how it is for now. And then after doing that, I want to say view dot add subview profile image view. So here, I'm basically just adding, I created this profile image view and I set its properties up. So now I want to add it to my view. I want to say view.add subview because my screen, this whole screen is itself one view. So there's nothing on it yet until I add stuff to it, until I add a subview. And I could only add subviews. I could only add subviews to views. Like only views could go into other views. So I'm saying here, like I could say view.add subview. I could even don't type this out, but I could even say profile image view.add subview because I could always add a subview to any view. So right now the view is just this big view, and I'm adding the subview profile image view. And I think with just that, if I press play. Also, if you get a box when you press play that says like to check mark this so that it never asks you again, check mark it because it gets annoying, and you never need that box. Okay, yeah. That's weird. So the image should be there. I'm pretty sure. Oh, did I spell it wrong? Profile. Profile image. That's right, right? Okay, if you run this, I'm pretty sure you should get the image. Okay. Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna just pretend that it's there. I'm pretty sure. Okay, actually, you know, this is a good time to talk about like constraints. So let's make a function here at the bottom. That's a part of the class. So between the last two brackets, we're gonna create a function. I'm gonna say func. The way we make a function is you say func setup constraints, and then that. It doesn't have to be exactly setup constraints. You could call it whatever. This just makes it nicer. That way we could separate the constraints from this like view did load function. And eventually we're going to be calling setup constraints within like as a last line within our view did load function. So the very last thing we want to do is set up the constraints for our objects, our views. So that's this function. And the way we actually like constrain things is through a complicated set of like code. So please follow along with this part. It's basically just ns layout constraint. So that first part, layout constraint, you just press enter. And then you do that activate. And then you do that act, and it'll automatically say activate. Constraints. Now, I'm not pressing anything else. I'm just going to press enter. And it automatically puts stuff in there. That's exactly what I want. And then I'm just going to delete this stuff in the middle. So it looks like this. You want your app to look like this for now. So I have this function, and then I'm calling this like NSLayout constraint.activate, which is going to activate the constraints that I have. But there are no constraints in here yet. I haven't put anything in it. So I'm going to start putting stuff in it. So my profile image view, I want to make sure it's center X anchor. I'm going to say the center X of my profile image view is constraint. And there's like a automatic stuff constraint equal to profile image view that center anchor that constraint is going to be equal to the center anchor of my view. View.center X anchor. This way I'm saying my view, my image is going to be aligned with like the middle of my view, the center X anchor of my view. That's how I access these properties. This is where those anchors actually come into play. Oops. But that's not going to be the only constraint that we have, because how does it know how like low or high to go? Like it doesn't know that yet. So I'll put this comma there because I have a lot more constraints that I want to add. And then I'm going to say profile image view dot. So now this profile image view, if I look at the app, if I look at the Figma, I'll see that this image view, the top anchor, like the top of the image view is a little bit below the top of like the view, the screen view. So what I want to say is like this top anchor for my UI view is going to be a couple pixels below the top of my app, top of my screen. So I'm going to say profile image view dot top anchor. dot constraint is going to be equal to, the views top anchor, except it's not gonna be view top. It's gonna be view dot safe area layout guide dot top anchor. So safe area layout guide, that is like the bounds, the safe bounds of a phone. So let me run this and see if it works real quick. Because if it doesn't, that'll be really sad. Okay, cool. So if you run it, it should look something like this. But I'm gonna play around with my code a bit, but you guys don't have to copy what I'm doing here right now. This safe area layout guide, if I delete it, and I should say view.top anchor, you could see the image goes a little bit above. Let me move this. The image goes a little bit above that little like head thingy bar or whatever. So that's not what we want. We want to make sure we have safe area layout guide. Safe area layout guide. Oh god. Okay. That's safe area layout guide. That way, the profile image view is centered or is away from the top anchor, the safe area layout guide top anchor. So that's good. That's exactly what we want. Okay. So that was one of the views, which is great. Now I want to add this like UI label, right? So let's go into doing that. I'm gonna go into this a little bit more. So let's do that. Let's do name label. It's gonna be almost same setup, but except I'm gonna be saying like name label that text is equal to, okay, Jamie Gonzalez, right? I gotta make it a string. Jamie Gonzalez. Okay. And then I'm gonna say name label dot, oops. So I have the text, and then I guess we could set the size, dot font, dot set font. Okay, yeah, you could do name label dot font is equal to dot system font of size, and this is where you could change the size. So I'm gonna say the name label dot font is equal to dot system font of size, let's say like 25 pixels. And then we always end with setting the translate auto resizing masking constraints to be false. And the last thing we do is we add the name label to my subview.
What is the translate?
Yeah, oh yeah, to go into that a bit more. So basically what this is saying is we're telling our app that we're gonna be the ones to constrain it. Because there's this default constraint system that Apple already implements within UIKit. But this update came out like I think 4 years ago or something. It was annoying. We didn't have to do this before, but now for every view that we create, we always have to say, at least in this class, we're always going to be saying that translate auto resize mask constraints is equal to false, because we're telling the app that we're going to be the ones constraining it. So if I like take this out, if I take this like line out for translate auto resize mask constraints, then my image won't be there. You might see some stuff. You might see some stuff top left, but it's not going to pay attention to the constraints that I made. What I want it to do, I want to tell the app like, hey, I have my constraints here at the bottom. Make sure to pay attention to them. That's what translate auto resizing mask constraints to false does. Yeah. At least not for like large apps. Storyboard is nice to get into app development, but when you're managing apps that are being worked on by like hundreds and thousands of people, you need a more like efficient way to kind of like work on the same app together. The thing is, Storyboard brings about a lot of bugs, a lot of unnecessary bugs. So using UIKit is just a cool, like an easier, more collaborative way to work on apps. So you could definitely do both, but we strongly recommend using this not Storyboard version. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna assume everybody's up to this point. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing as before. In my setup constraints function, I'm gonna say ns layout constraint dot activate. Remember this stuff, if you just type in the first couple letters of these things, you could automatically like press tab and like make it faster so that you could like, so you don't have to type everything out. And then I'm gonna say name label dot leading, or actually no, same as the image. Name label dot center x anchor dot constraint is going to be equal to. So this is the cool thing about views. When I constrain things, I could constrain them relative to one another. So my name label center x anchor is going to be equal to my profile image view dot center x anchor. That way my name label is centered with like my profile image view. I could also say view. Loki, like this doesn't even have to be profile image view. It could also be view dot center x anchor, because they're both the same thing. But this just show you that you could reference other things within other constraints, which we will also be doing here. So name label dot top anchor, if you could tell, this name label top anchor is basically like a couple pixels below the image. So that's what I'm going to say here. I'm going to say name label dot top anchor dot constraint is going to be equal to my views, or not my view, my profile image views bottom anchor. So what I'm saying here is that my name label is going to be below my profile image view. And that looks kind of close. I'm gonna give it some constant. So the constant tells me how many pixels I want it downwards, or how many pixels I want it in the y direction. Because the top anchor is talking about y direction. So this constant is going to be the offset in the y direction. So like I said before in the slides, positive y is downwards. So I want to move this downwards, right? So I'm going to make it a positive number. I'm going to make it like 30. And there, it moved down. And that's good. That's exactly what we want. Yeah.
Is that numerical value? Is that pixels?
Yeah. Every numerical value here we use is basically going to be in pixels. Yeah.
So do you want to make a new like NS layout constraint and activate it with every different like component you're using?
Yeah. You could also put this like together. If I were to like comment this out, you could put all of these like in, oh yeah, because of comma. You could put all of these together in one NS layout constraint. The thing is though, when you're coding and you have a bug and you have like a million views, you don't want to like have them all in like the same NS Autolayout activate thingy, because then you'll be confused. You'll be like, I don't know what to comment out. But if we have it set up like this in two separate NSAO activate whatever, we separate like how we set up each one of these views. So if one of them is buggy, say for example this one. Okay, this could be a bug. Maybe I forgot to add my name label to my view, and it's gonna be like, oh no, what happened? Then I'll go like, okay, let me check out this one. Let me see if it works. So, and it's gonna work because that label, because it wasn't added to the subview, you can't constrain it. So that's a lot of error that some people have, and then they're like, oh shoot, I forgot to add my name label to my subview, and then everything works all of a sudden. So that's one of the bugs that you might be encountering within any app project, and that's how you kind of like check that. You could like, it's a lot. The way we separated them is because it's a lot easier to kind of like debug when you're running into errors. Yeah.
This is a view controller Swift file. We have different view controllers with every different page.
Yeah, exactly right. We're going to be going to that a bit more next week when we talk about navigation between different pages. We're going to have different view controllers for different screens. But you could think of every view controller controlling one screen at a time. So this view controller is controlling the main screen. But for other kinds of lectures, we're going to be talking about multiple screens, multiple view controllers, and a lot of different views. Yeah.
So like storyboard.
Storyboard what? Oh, yeah. You should not touch this. Like this is uncharted territory. This is like danger zone. You don't want to go here. Like before, like in previous years, we usually like just straight up delete this, but it caused too many errors now, so we're just leave it be because our app runs fine. But you don't really want to touch it unless you're starting like a launch screen. I think that's the only time you want to use storyboard.
Like it was originally, like did it come because the storyboard stuff came out?
Yeah, or I think it was a little after storyboard. I'm not exactly sure about the history, but we just always have to include it now when we're talking about our kind of app development. Okay, yeah, for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip the description. I'm gonna do the button. So yeah, let's do this button. Okay, so edit profile button. So edit buttons are kind of different because they don't have like a text or anything. So it's like they all have like these things called like set functions. So I'm gonna do like edit profile dot set title, and this is gonna set the title of the button. And the title of the button is basically just the name that goes on the button here. So in this case, it's edit my profile. So my title is gonna be edit my profile in this arrow. And the state of it is just gonna be normal. For the normal state of this button, there are many states of the button, but for the normal state, we want it to be this edit my profile thing. Okay. And now what we also want to do, we can see the text color is also different, right? So we're gonna say set title color. So edit profile button, set title color. And we're gonna say it's dot purple or dot normal as well. So basically I'm just setting the color to be purple. You could use dot, like there's a dot there. Yeah, if you don't see it, dot purple. It's just a faster way to talk about like colors within Swift. And so we got the text, we have the color. I think that's basically it. Yeah, that's basically, oh, yeah, there's this other, okay. So adding like a function for this button to do. So, okay. I hope everybody's at this point now, because I'm about to start leaving like this code a bit. So is anybody still, okay, yeah. Okay, a second. I'm just gonna write some stuff here. Function. Okay, so I made this other function button action at the bottom. That's what we're going to be using. Remember, we have to add the at objc tag to the front of that function. That way our app knows that this function is associated with a button. So, okay. And here I'm just going to say print like I ran or something, or I was hit. That way we know it's like at least working. And so, okay. Yeah, like I'll zoom out a bit too. So basically I just added these lines of code. And then this function immediately after my setup constraints. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this function to this button. So I'm going to say edit button, edit profile button dot add target. Add target is saying I'm adding like this function as a target. And it gives me three different fields to fill in. So the target, what's the target? It's going to be the self. So this button itself will be the target for this function. The action parameter is going to be a selector, hashtag selector. And it's going to be the name of the button. Do not include these like parentheses. You just want to include the name of the function itself, button action. And the event will be that touch up inside. So if you remember, it's like when I press the button, lift my finger up, that's going to be when our function executes that, or when our button executes that function. All right. And then last couple things, we're going to be translating its thing to be false, translate auto resizing mask constraint to be false. And we're going to add it to the subview. And the very last thing we call is setup constraints. So there's a lot of things you got to add for a button, and it might be confusing at first, but throughout this course, you'll be making many buttons. So this stuff will be a breeze soon, hopefully. Any questions here so far? Is there any part of code that you guys want me to go to? If you run it, just to test to see if it runs, like it should run fine. It should be the same thing though, nothing added. We still have yet to constrain. Okay. So the last thing I'm gonna constrain is this button. So remember NS layout constraint to activate. You could honestly just copy and paste like this whole thing here at the bottom, and then just delete the stuff inside. That also works. Like, yeah, that spacing and then delete. And now we're gonna constrain the button. So I'm gonna say edit profile button. So now if we see here, it's like at the bottom right? So for one, we know that it's right anchor. The right anchor of this button is a little bit offset to the right side of the screen. And the bottom of this button is a little bit above the bottom of the screen. So the bottom anchor is like a little bit above the bottom anchor of the screen. So I'm going to say the right anchor, I'm going to say edit profile button dot right anchor dot constraint is going to be equal to my view dot trailing anchor. Oh, did I say right anchor? My bad. This is like trailing. I'm right anchor works as well, but trailing is what you want to use. So edit profile button dot trailing anchor dot constraint equal to view dot trailing anchor. And then you want to put a comma immediately after that, put a constant, because it's not stuck to the right side of the screen. It's stuck it's a little bit offset in the negative X direction. So I'm gonna say like negative 30. I'm gonna say negative 30 and I'm gonna call it that. And then I'm gonna say edit profile button dot bottom anchor dot constraint. So the bottom of my button will be constrained a little bit off the bottom of my view. So it's gonna be view dot bottom anchor with the same constant, except this time it's also negative 30 because I'm moving it up. This time I'm moving it up, remember? But yeah, also remember the comma. Oh yeah, another cool thing about Xcode, if you have an error, you should definitely click the error to see if it gives you any fixes. It'll give you like suggestions, and most of the time it works. Other times it's just kind of dumb. But when you click fix, it adds the comma and it fixes my code. So it's some great things that Xcode could do. Yeah. And then after you do all that and you run it, we should hopefully see a button. Cool. We see a button and then we click it. We see I was hit. So it executes that function that I wanted it to. Is everybody up to this point? Is anybody stuck? Okay. So there's this one thing I wanted to show you about buttons that I think is going to be cool for this next project, maybe. You could toggle, and we're going to go a little bit over, but you could toggle like the action of the button. So what I mean by that is that every button has this property. So what is this button called? Edit profile button. We're going to say if edit profile button dot is selected. Every button has this property is selected. That is either true or false. It's a Boolean. And what it says is if this thing is selected, then do something. And what we're going to do here is we're going to change the background color of the button itself. So I'm going to say edit profile button dot background color. Oh, no. Background color dot purple. We're going to set the background button of the button to be purple. Else, I'm going to say the edit profile button background color. Good. I'm going to say the background color of my button is going to be clear. Oh, I forgot this thing. Okay. So what I'm saying here is if my button is selected, then I change the background color to be purple. If it isn't selected, then let me change it to be clear. And after all of this, I want to edit that property of is selected. I'm going to do edit profile button dot is selected dot toggle. And what dot toggle does is it automatically sets the value of is selected to be the opposite of what it was. Another way to write this out could be like, you don't have to set this out, this line I'm typing right now, but it could also be written out as like is selected is equal to not edit is selected. That's the same way you could do it. But toggle is a lot nicer of a way to like type that out. But this is just a cool property about buttons that you could that you could take advantage of if you want to talk about a button and like whether or not it's clicked. So now when I click this button, as you can see, it turns purple. And then you can toggle it. If I didn't have this toggle at the end, it wouldn't do anything because it's always false. It's always like, I guess, yeah, it's always false. So I want to toggle it. Did everybody get that? Is everybody up to that? All right. Yeah, we couldn't go into UI views or text views today. Sorry we went a little bit over, but I will post a video talking about UI text views later tomorrow, maybe. It's not that much different from anything else. The only thing that I want you guys also to take away from this lecture is that view, like I constrained my views very sparingly. Like I only had 2 constraints for every view. You should not do this in practice. In practice, you want to make sure that all of your things are constrained within all 4 directions. Like for example, my image view, it has a center X and like top anchor, but it has no idea how far from the bottom it could be. It should be. So say if my screen is like too small, then my image will go below that bottom of the screen. So maybe I want to resize my image if that is the case, if my screen is too small. But those are things I didn't take care of here because for the sake of time. But always like constrain your things when you're making apps like in the real world. Always constrain your things in all 4 directions. That way, there's no ambiguity with like how your images appear on the screen on any kind of screen. All right. But that's all. That's all for today. If anybody has any questions, like feel free to come after lecture.